Let me know if we are live.
We are live.
We are live. Awesome. So, hello to everybody tuning in on the live stream. It is my honor, my pleasure, and my joy to introduce to you my 姐姐, or in Chinese, that is my older sister, Ying. She has been an inspiration to me. She is a friend who I have never met, who has become a sister that I know I will have for the rest of my life. We have shared stories about heartbreak. We have shared stories about friendship. We have cried and we have shared so many memories. And she is the person who I know that if I call at 5 in the morning my time, it's fine because it's 5 p.m. at her time. So the time difference completely works for us. Ying, she is an optimist, a connector, a co-founder of Ynternational community. She will marry Simon Sinek one day. I'm putting that out in the universe. That's her secret dream. um, or she will find her Prince Charming one day as well. Ying is walking towards a world by connecting and inspiring people meaningfully so that together we can empower each other to live a fulfilling life. And yeah, she lives her why by initiating conversations with people and communities, igniting possibilities, and inspiring actions. So let's connect, and it's all with a why. And Ying, this is your time to shine. So proud of you. Over to you.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Mei Mei. This is the Chinese word for little sister. And thank you, everybody, for showing up and being here with me. And welcome to my storytelling session. We have been having 3 full days of wisdom, knowledge. So I thought that for my session, I would share 2 stories, 2 personal, very personal stories, and to hopefully lighten up the day. So you do not have to take any notes, but I would ask you to have a pen and paper. Yeah, I see some thumbs up. Thank God, no note taking. And but I would encourage you to have your phone by your side, a paper pad or a pen, a paper pad and a pen. And you don't need to use them until the end of the session. And I will prompt you to that, so no worry. And I'm super excited to be here today. My hands and legs are all shaking. And for things that really matters in my life, I write a script. So this one is no different. and but it never turns out the way that I wrote the script for anything. So all right, let's go. When I was 5, Dad took me on a walk in the neighborhood. At one point during the walk, he told me that he was lost, and he asked me to help us figure out how to get home. I knew he was lying, and I also knew that he wanted to train me to be independent. And in that moment, I felt alone and helpless. I didn't know how exactly what happened, but somehow we got home. I didn't realize until the recent years that it was actually a quite traumatic experience for little Ying. Otherwise, I wouldn't be still remembering it or sharing it with you today, right? And from that point on, there is a very strong voice in my head commanding me and said, figuring out on your own. You are all alone. That plays out in many plays in my life to prove this prophecy right. And I found myself continue to recreate life events, to relive that moment of being helpless and being all alone, in hope to cope with little Ying's feeling of helplessness. Human beings are social machines. We all crave for belonging, and we all have the ability to connect with one and another if we choose to do so. My journey started as a child. My parents are actually very busy folks, and I got to flow between many loving families growing up. That experience taught me 2 abilities, in which later on has become my winning formulas in life. One, it's being adaptable to my environment. And the second one is to be independent. And the benefit of my winning formulas are I was able to get along with people quite well everywhere I go. And I'm not a very shy fellow, as probably a lot of you find out. And I don't have any trouble starting a conversation on a New York subway, or collecting stories from Uber driver, or traveling to South America by myself and making friends all over the place. And another benefit for those two winning formulas is be independent. That enabled me to be quite self-sufficient and adapt quite well, especially after migrating to a new country during teenage year. And even with limited language, I was able to navigate through high school, and while fighting all the hormones during that time. And that being said, there's always two sides of the coin. Being adaptable to the extreme came alive in my action as a people pleaser, because I was once told by my parents, don't raise any trouble while I was under others' roof. And being independent to the extreme came alive by choosing not to show vulnerability and missing out all the value others bringing by focusing on just getting things under my control. These negative sides to my winning formulas were showing up in all my relationships, especially the close ones. You know, the one with my parents, the one with my close friends, and even during dating. I swing from being sweet, happy-go-lucky, to being completely shut down in face of conflict and intention. There was no vulnerability being shown. And I was so afraid to cause any trouble, and thought that by doing this, I was protecting myself and others. And the result of that was a lot of emotional pain, unnecessary drama, and the lack of deep connection. And I honestly thought that was the only way to survive in this world. People who knew me for years, like some of you in the Zoom room today, knew about my struggles with my parents for many years. My parents and I had a fine relationship. You know, the typical Asian parent and child relationship, where we know we love each other, but we just don't show it. And we bicker at each other all the time. There are many years in my life that I could not hold a 5-minute civil conversations with them. And I thought to myself, well, this is kind of normal. Everybody has their own family drama and family struggle. Mine is just 1 in a million, or billions even. The idea of having a closer and more affectionate relationship with my parents were there, but I told myself, well, that's just silly. Why rock the boat when everything seems to be working? And especially now we live in 2 different cities. But what I didn't realize was there was a giant gap in my relationship with my parents. And that very gap, was projected and mirrored everywhere in my life. One obvious example was my last dating relationship. And my question for you, you don't have to answer it in the chat or leave any record. Does anybody here have a bad breakup? Raise your hand proud, or raise your eyebrows, or make a fist, make a face. It's that kind of relationship that's so bad that if people ask you and you will say, well, don't even ask, don't even get me started. That kind. And when that relationship ended, I wasn't in good shape. I used to mock people that told me that they lost sleep, they couldn't function in life after a bad breakup. Well, that happened to me after that relationship ended. For months, I could only take in like boiled food, like boiled vegetable, boiled egg, and my body will have a strong reaction by taking anything extra than that, even adding seasoning to the food. And at that time, I went to a personal and professional development course for a weekend retreat in hope that I can get over those residual pain and suffering from that experience. And what I actually discovered from that program was my own inauthenticity with myself and my parents about little Ying being lodged with others for a period of 2 years. And don't get me wrong, I never got mistreated. I was actually being treated really well. But being away from my parents as a little child was just enough for me to have that traumatic reaction. And during that weekend program, it hit me that for little Ying, just being away from my parents was more traumatic than I ever imagined to be before. And what I took away from day one of the conversation, I turned it into a 5-sentence script. And it reads like this. I told you everything in life that matters to me, I write a script. So for this one, it's no different. And sentence number 1 for the script is, I pretend to be independent and don't need a lot of help from my parents. Sentence number 2, when in fact, I have been longing for my parents' affection and love. Sentence number 3, the impact of my inauthenticity is I either shut down completely and suffer in silence, or I throw temper tantrums to my parents. Again, we couldn't even hold a 5-minute civil conversation for many years, especially since we moved to the United States. Sentence number 4, the whole time I was being that way, I was losing the sense of affinity, closeness, vulnerability, freedom, and self-expression with 2 of the most important people I've ever had in my life, which is my parents. And the last sentence, standing there in the world of intention and possibility, I am creating the possibility of being 100% honest with my emotions, with my parents. Upon that discovery, the leader asked me, okay, that's great. When are you telling your parents about your script? And my reply, one day. Well, now, can I get a shout out for all my one day later people out there? Like, I do the meal plan later. I'll have a conversation with my boss later. I'll deal with this later. Anybody have said that before? Procrastinator, unite. Raise your hand. Maybe we will unite in a couple of days. So she challenged me to go share with them now and see what happens. And I said, okay, being the people pleaser mode, okay, I will share with them, of course, why not? And I was on the stage too. So, but in my mind, I was just gonna do it with my mom. I didn't want it to break my promise. I want to keep my word. So I choose a lower hanging fruit because I know that I'm closer to my mom. I know that she would love me no matter what I said. And I was a little scared that my mom would get defensive, but I was like, okay, I will still do it. And when I shared that five sentence script with her, her reply surprised me. She said, I'm very sorry. That was the best I knew how to raise you up then. And for that 6 months while your dad was away for business trip and I was going to school and working, that was the best I knew how to do it. And I may have given you a materially abundant life, but I did not pay close attention to your emotional state. Well, first of all, if you pay attention closely earlier, She said 6 months. And what did I say earlier? 2 years. In my mind, it was 2 years. It was 2 years for 20 years. I held that false fact for decades. And both mom and I were crying for a really long time on the phone after that conversation. And through that conversation together, we also create the possibility of being 100% honest with our emotion, love, and vulnerability. When the tears subsided, my mom asked me if I want her to share this conversation with my dad. He was traveling in China at that time. And I said, absolutely not. I'll figure how to tell him later. Again, the word later. I did not plan to tell him that after all these. I went back to the second day and, happily reported my progress and success. And I was actually expecting like a good job, Ying. Acknowledgement is a big thing for me. So I was also expecting to receiving that. So I was reporting that on the stage. And the response I received was not exactly what I anticipated. It was, okay, when are you telling your dad this? Really? You guys see this face before, right before this talk. And so I tried once again to delay and making excuse by saying that, maybe I will tell him after I go back to China and spend the holiday with him. And, he's busy traveling in China right now. And, if you live in Singapore, there's a 12-hour time difference. And he's sleeping. So it wouldn't make sense for me to call him right now to bother him. But really, I was just afraid. And I didn't want to deal with it. And at that point, the leader looked at me square in the eyes and said, your dad could be dead tomorrow. Now, wait a second. I was like, what? That was a little bit offensive. And she continued. She said, well, it is possible because we never know what will happen to anybody in the next moment. And you could be dead tomorrow too. And she paused, then continued. And he would never know how much you love him. Well, that did the trick. My nose started to get really sore. And in fact, as I am sharing this with you right now, I get a little bit sore on my nose as well, like every time I share this story. And she said softly but firmly to me, call your dad in the next break. So I started calling him at 12 p.m. New York time, which is 12 a.m. China time. And obviously he did not pick up. I just kept calling every break until my 7 p.m. New York time break, which is 7 a.m. for him. And I got him. And he was in a very high spirit. Like I said, he was traveling with his friends. And he started talking about his trip, just like every time we talk about very high level stuff. We talk about like very superficially stuff. How's the weather? How's the politics? It's never personal. And I stopped him. I said, Dad, can I share something with you? And he stopped and he paused, like one of those things when it's like, hey, I need to have a talk with you. And then the other person kind of feel it, and then they stop and kind of get a little bit awkward silence. And he said, okay. And so I started my 5-sentence script. And as I finished the second sentence, which is, in fact, I have been longing for the love and affection from you, he cut me off, saying that, well, that was because I was being too serious. And so our relationship dynamic is very different from the one you have with your mom. And what I was hearing at that point is he took it upon himself to defend me. And that's not the father I know. My father is somebody that can do no wrong. He can be argumentative, before the conversation happens, it's just like he's always right. So that was a 180-degree response I never expect from him. And yeah, so what I was hearing is he took it upon himself to defend me. At that moment, my tears started to stream down. And I said, whoa, Dad, you know, like, can I stick with my script? Like, can I finish my script? I have 3 more sentences to go. And yes, I did say the script. And he let me go on. As I finished the last sentence, there was a few seconds of silence, but it felt like a few minutes. And he said, I know it from your action. You show your love through your action. And then he turned on to his lecture mode. And he was like, well, this is why I always tell you, you got to have more confidence in yourself. And then he said, and maybe it's because I've been too critical of you all along, so that you don't believe yourself enough. And he said that you planned weekly family day and took us experience different food or different places when you live in Las Vegas. And when you move away, you make sure you come home every other month. So I know you loved us. And I might not have told you about this, but I often brag about you in front of my friends. I just don't say it in front of you because that's just the way it is. That's just the way that I am. And if you look around your peers, there are not that many people that would do the same things that you do. And the last thing he said to me is, many have said to him, he gave up a lot in moving our family to America. But he never regretted that a bit because he gained his family back. And I mean, if I'm getting emotional right now, you can imagine the first time I heard it. So yeah, I was just breaking down on the other end of the phone. I never expect to hear this coming from my father, as his default voice in my head is always, you are not good enough. Keep improving yourself. And at that moment, all the emotional barrier I built from all these decades between us just dissolved. And as I hung up, I said to myself, well, if I can do this with my dad, if I can have this kind of conversation with my dad, I can do anything. So I started to call up all the other people in my life where our relationship got cut off without any closure. And in one of the conversations, I was told that I wasn't very vulnerable. And there were many times when Ying said, I got this, and the other person just let me do whatever, I got really upset. And the other person got really confused. It was like, well, I thought you said you got this, but like when you're doing it, why the heck are you getting upset? And what I got from all these conversations was how my winning formulas of being adaptable and being independent were the exact same thing that getting into the way of developing deep connections. It was just so automatic, I didn't even realize it. And now I am aware of those, what do my winning formulas do in me building connections with people. If I catch it in time, I'm able to pause and get myself out of the autopilot mode and be in the world of intentional connection by authentically sharing myself. Am I 100% successful all the time? Obviously not. I screw up from time to time, but I'm making progress. And as one of my dear friends, one of the speakers you heard before, Angel Love said, progress is perfection. So today, much in our relationship, a lot of things are the same. Mom and I still kind of like hug each other, and we still say, I love you. And we still do the sister bickering. And Dad and I still talk about weather, still talk about politics, still talk about my job. And he still lectures me, of course. These things haven't changed on the surface level. But at the same time, everything has changed. These interactions are filled with the deep knowing and deep understanding that we love each other unconditionally. And I now see the bickering and lecturing with a completely new lens. Now, they occur to me as love from my parents. Oh, and now that we have the closest relationship as a family, I share everything with them, literally everything, including all my past and current relationships. Yes, those taboo topics that Asian kids typically don't share with their parents. My why, my passion, I share with them as well. And then, of course, I share Ynternational with them as well. And some of you see them come up from time to time. And the list just goes on. They're very involved in my life as best friends, adult to adult, not parents to daughter anymore. And they also share with me a lot of their personal journey in entrepreneurship and their personal relationships and many other experiences that I never know because I never bothered to ask before. And now that I feel like we know each other at a completely different level, in a more elevated and profound way. Yeah, and Mom actually, right now, she's my yoga accountability buddy. So just like Angel Love and Evelyn Vargas, they call each other in the morning to do yoga. Mom and I are doing the same thing to each other. So yeah, we would do 5 a.m. yoga, and then we would do meditation, we would do journaling, and we would share our experience together and our reflection together. And none of this was possible in my mind 2 years ago. It was not possible in my life, in my occurring to the world, before I was willing to confront my own stories and share that in authenticity and vulnerability with them. And now I feel ultra supported by my parents, and that gave me access to tremendous courage to take on any journey and have any conversation with anyone. And if we lose each other, just like what the leader said earlier, tomorrow, we would know that we are complete with each other and love each other deeply and unconditionally. It's a life with no regret. I'm sharing this story with you today with the hope that you can learn something from my journey. We don't attract what we want. We attract what we are. And what we resist, persists. The very thing we are running away from or trying to quiet down, just like Aura earlier said, positive affirmation, those quiet things runs our lives. Acceptance truly is the catalyst for any transformation. So try to change your lens. That will change your story. And changing your story really will change your life experience. And what I also got from my stories is that possibility exists in sharing, just like how I was sharing it with my parents. And we often hear about the importance of being intentional in our actions But what I also got from my own experience is that intentional in your connection is also very important as well. So thank you for listening, and I hope this story, the first story, is meaningful for you. And this is the time you grab your paper and your pen, and Angel Marie will pop that 5 question, pop that 5 sentence in the chat, and also some questions for you to reflect on in the next 5 minutes. What are the stories you have been telling yourself? What is that inauthenticity you have not been willing to look at? And what is that vulnerability you have kept so close to your chest and not willing to share? And after those 3 sentences, maybe think about that 5 sentence script. And I urge you, as what the program leader did for me, take the next 5 minutes. We're going to go quiet for the next 5 minutes. Go share your reflection and perhaps your script with the people that you have been somedaying on. Don't hesitate. Call them, because you never know when is the last time you talk to someone. And my next story is about someone I did not call in time. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, I didn't scare anybody away yet, so thank you for staying in for the next session. This one will be a shorter story. So, and can I get a hand raised for somebody who actually called someone this weekend? I'm sorry, this 5 minutes? Okay, what about a hand raise for some reflection, text? Okay. All right, so actually that story was actually going to be the only story I was going to tell. And this next story is an add-on story. I decided very last minute because of a recent event. And I really want to use this story to honor and celebrate a marvelous human being who just passed over from this world. So let me start by asking a few questions. Do you consider yourself a reasonable person? Give me a hand, raise your hand, or give me a thumbs up, or say it in the chat, or say it in live stream. Are you reasonable? Are you a reasonable person? Awesome, I got a lot of response. Okay, and some shaking heads, good. And then second question, have you heard or even said the saying, I know better? Or point your finger to somebody else and say, you know better. Give me a thumbs up or raise your hand that you have heard this, you have said this. Awesome. So these are not new terms for many of us. Okay, what if I'm here to tell you, thinking that knowing better kills possibilities, and go ahead to live a life unreasonably. It's a little bit radical, isn't it? Well, stay with me in this next story. So the next story has two characters. Character number one, a very, very, very incredible human being, a beloved federal judge in the Las Vegas community, the Honorable Lloyd D. George, the first judge that has a federal courthouse named after him in Nevada while he was still living. Character number two, a new immigrant to the United States. Ying, me. A new kid in the block, in the Las Vegas block, in high school, speaking very broken English. And at that point, I didn't even know how to answer the question, what's up? Yep. My friend was used to make fun of me, say, okay, Ying, if you don't know how to answer the question, what's up? Next time when we ask you, just look up to the ceiling or the sky and tell me what is up there. So, like many young immigrants, when I first moved to the country, I didn't want to be here. I especially during teenage year when I made a bunch of friends in China, I don't want to be here. I didn't want to be in the United States. And I wanted to go back where I have my family who love me and have great friends to be with. I have nothing to do. I didn't want to have anything to do in this new place. And little did I know that sudden departure from my homeland was another traumatic experience for me. And many years later, when I found my why, I realized that that traumatic experience has been the launch pad of my why, because I was feeling disconnected. And I saw Annie's coming, yay. Okay. So, but I wasn't an adult. I didn't have the power to say, okay, I'm out of here. So I stayed in the United States, obviously, and now I chose to stay here. And at that time, what my dad told me is, instead of choosing one country, I can be the bridge between these two countries. And as I was crystallizing my why a few months ago, I connected the dots about connections all the way back to that point. That disconnection from my home country was the very point of giving birth to this lifelong journey of my why, to become a connector. So, but how did I become this bridge that my dad was talking about? So at that point, I was like, well, I guess I get to study a little bit to know a little bit better about this country that I'm in. And how do I do that? What is the best way to understand the foundation of this country? My answer at that point was the legal system. My story with Judge George started when I was a high school senior girl. Thank you, Banana. Upon my completion of the internship in the United States Senate office in Las Vegas, I asked the office if there's any other internship opportunity in the federal courthouse. And as a new immigrant who has very little knowledge and very little language skills, I couldn't tell the difference between the legislative branch and the judicial branch. To me, if they're in the same building, they must be in the same entity. And there was so much I didn't know, like how to build a resume. At that point, my resume still has my birthday and my pictures on it. That's not the format in the United States, by the way. If you need to send in any resume to the United States, don't include your birthday, don't include your picture. That's not very appropriate. And I did not know getting a law degree is the requirement for interning for a federal judge. And little that I know, I did not know going to law school. Before that, you need to get an undergrad degree. So that tells you like how much I know. And but the office was very generous. The office of Senate, the senator's office, they gave me a list of roster of all the federal judges' chambers. So the person, the Ying that doesn't know much language, that doesn't know much about the United States political system, what I did at that point is I started to call up the chambers one by one, going down the list, just like a phone book. And a lot of you, if you are political junkies, if you're a historian junkie, you probably are laughing at your face right now. I was like, why are you doing that? That is the first step of embarrassing yourself. Well, I didn't know better. So, and shocker, most of them actually politely returned my call and told me that, the minimum requirement for interning for a judge, you got to be a law school student. And I still didn't know that being a law school student, you got to go to university first. And what I would say is that they are really kind enough to take in my embarrassing resume, and very sweet of them to call me back, right? And after many dead ends, I actually got a call from Judge George's chamber, and I was invited back for an interview. I didn't know what to expect, but I went to the interview anyway. And in that interview, Judge George spent an hour getting to know me and start sharing with me his life story, and then took me around for a tour of the courthouse, which is named after him at that point. And at the end of the tour, he actually took me up to the U.S. Court Library to meet with the head librarian. And he said to the librarian, I have this marvelous young lady who is interested in learning about the judicial branch. Is it possible for us to create an externship for her to do some independent study and to get some knowledge about this? And the head librarian said, yeah, of course. So that was the first step of being unreasonable and being not knowing better. And then at that point, throughout the next decade, Judge George actually stayed in touch with me and gave me the gift of a new perspective through many of his stories. From his stories, I knew a different Las Vegas, a city that I actually didn't really like too much. And through his lens, I get to know about the city more and love the city. And he let me sit with him in the naturalization ceremony when I wasn't a citizen yet, but I get to experience the experience of being a naturalized citizen. And many years later, he was actually the judge that naturalized me to become the United States citizen. And he also shared with me many beautiful stories about his family, his lovely wife, and his children and grandchildren. And when he found out when I was moving out of Las Vegas to New York, he gave me some contacts in New York of some family members so that I got a very warm welcome to the new city that I love. These are just a few gifts I received from Judge George, but in reality, I couldn't name every single thing that he has given me and making me become the person that I am today. So, but you know, like I always have this fear. He's all up there and I'm all down here. I don't want to like bother him too much. So I don't really make a lot of call to him. And on October 7, 2020, Judge George, former Judicial Executive Assistant Lee, texted me and said he passed away on that morning at age 90. I didn't know how to feel at that point, but listening to Lee's voice, my tears started to stream down because we both share a lot of lovely memories and a lot of blessing that Judge George has brought to us. And for all these years, I couldn't figure out why a well-respected judge would want to stay in touch with me. And today, I still don't know the answer. But what I gather from this story with Judge George was a connection born out of intention, the intention of wanting to be the bridge between US and China. And I will be forever grateful for Judge George's intentional listening and his radical acceptance to look beyond a very embarrassing resume from a high school student who is a new immigrant. And now I can only pay back his gratitude, his generosity and his inspiration by paying it forward and hold safe space and keeping faith for people who does not have enough faith for themselves, like what he did for me in the past 2 decades. So I know that we're running out of time. So for the next reflection question, Angel Marie, if you can pop them up really quick in your same journal, same paper, I would like for you to reflect on these 3 questions. Who was that person that you are grateful for, who believed in you until you have enough faith for yourself? And who was very present for your greatness? Was there a time when you did not know better but did it anyway, and things turned out miraculously? And what doors do you want to knock on right now but have not, because you are being reasonable and have your own consideration? So to be connected with that person with intention, my suggestion is don't procrastinate. Use the next 10 minutes to call someone in your life that matters a lot to you and share this with them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ying. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can we all give Ying like a virtual hug? I think very, very big virtual hug. Thank you so much, Ying. I think like if we could, I think like there's so many conversations that we'd love to hear more from you and how you connect people and how you've connected all of us. So thank you for sharing your story so vulnerably and so courageously. And for me personally, thank you for being that person that I'm so grateful to help me dream big and to help me and to always remind me of my worth as well. So to connect with Ying, you can go to wire.live/speakers and you can connect with her there. And also, Ying will have, as she will always check in on you as well once you make that connection. So we're going to close the room for the next 10 minutes. We encourage you to, yes, ponder over the questions that Ying has shared with you. And as we prepare for the next session with Dee Martin to discover your unlimited self-power. So if you're staying on. We're going to put you into the waiting room and we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you very much, everybody.